into Dragon Ball Super Dope. My name is Kyle. Thank you for checking this out. Very special episode today. If you are a longtime listener to the show, you've probably heard some other geeky, nerdy properties that I'm a huge fan of. One of them that I've been referencing, especially since quarantine happened, because I managed to find all 3 seasons of Pete and Pete on DVD. I've been referencing Pete and Pete quite frequently. And oddly enough, about a year ago, I'd reached out to Michael C. Maronna, aka Big Pete Wrigley, on the show Pete and Pete, on Twitter, and we've been fairly friendly, interacting with each other there. But he recently got back and said he'd be happy to do the podcast. So, hey man, without further ado, I am pleased to welcome Michael C. Maronna to Dragon Ball Super Dope. Michael, how are you doing?
All right, thanks, Kyle. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you for getting back to me. Oddly enough, checking the timestamp on our DMs, I sent you a message that basically had said, "Working hard for that follow, Mr. Maronna." And then almost a year to the day, a couple of days after the year anniversary of that DM, you just randomly got back and said, "Yeah, I'll do the podcast." Anything in particular that had you checking your DMs that day?
Just want to clear out my summer DMs for my fall DMs.
That makes sense, man. I imagine you have lots of fun DMs coming in and out.
Thanks.
Not fun, actually. Fun in the not fun sense. If you follow Michael on Twitter, you'll probably know what I mean. Good job fighting the war on trolls, brother. I appreciate your efforts.
Just not, you can't get sucked in and become that which you are fighting. But there's always that struggle.
Yeah,
thanks.
It's tough, man. Toeing the line every day. Can't let it consume me. However, a couple of years ago, I discovered that you and Danny Tamberelli have a podcast called The Adventures of Danny and Mike. Growing up as a big Pete and Pete fan, I was elated to hear that you guys are, not only so friendly, but still making content together. So obviously I dove deep into the catalog, and you're a pretty interesting dude. You have a lot of interesting
You're very kind.
Thank you.
Danny and I have made a couple of appearances at comic book conventions in the last few years, and so I have been able to expose him to more Dragon Ball Z content. He was also comic book head when he was younger, so we're sort of cross pollinating each other.
How is there a big age difference between the two of you?
I'm 4 years older than him, which
Just
I think
like
is
on the show.
There you go.
There you go. That's pretty interesting to me. So, you have these various things that you'll, talk about, dive into every once in a while. One of them is like 90s hip hop and R&B, which I always appreciate whenever you bring up and just drop a verse on something I don't expect you to know. But you also reference Dragon Ball pretty, I don't know, frequently is the right word, but every once in a while you'll just dip into a diatribe about Piccolo. So knowing that about you, when I first learned that, coming across those things in the catalog, I thought to myself, this would be a perfect person to get on Super Dope. I'm interested to hear the story of how you even became a Dragon Ball fan in the first place. But before we do, the general conversation about Dragon Ball, whatever it is, your commitment to the fandom, however you want to word it, I do have these general warm-up kind of questions that I like to do with everybody that I interview, just to sort of get to know you and take the temperature in terms of your Dragon Ball fandom. So do you want to run through those real quick?
Go right ahead. If it means proving myself.
It's not so much proving yourself. It's more just I want to know where we stand. Are you a Super Subs fan, a Super Dubs fan? Which is your favorite series? Things like that, just to kind of, know where your headspace is when it comes to approaching a series that spans over 30 years at this point.
Sure. I probably the first time slot that I was introduced to Dragon Ball Z was in the afternoon television, in the context of pre or post Jerry Springer in the late 90s.
So
And
probably
so
like
I watched a
UPN, like localized stuff before it went to Cartoon Network, probably.
yes, and then also Cartoon Network, as I guess my college roommates had cable or something like that.
Got it. Got it.
So
So
that was a dubbed, obviously.
so all right. So I understanding like I guess how you first found it. Let's run through these warm-up questions first. Who is your favorite character in all of Dragon Ball?
I know it's probably Krillin. I know I'm
Okay.
supposed to have thought about these beforehand, but it's just going to go off the dome here. So
No, I appreciate the gut reaction in terms of your answers. Any reason though why we're going with Krillin? I mean, there's got to be some kind of reasoning behind that gut instinct.
I think it's because that was the first like image of Dragon Ball Z that I had.
So some of the early stuff you saw in terms of the
Yeah,
dub featured a lot of Krillin.
I had no, just like I had watched kung fu movies when I was younger, and my same uncles who got me into comic books and kung fu movies and stuff like that were also familiar with animation from Japan. Just that like that stylized monk with Krillin's character was the first like Dragon Ball Z image that remember being aware of when I was younger.
Got it. Who would you say is your favorite villain from Dragon Ball?
Uh, I would say after doing a little bit of watching, the one who really likes snacks,
Majin
who's the
Buu.
one. No,
Or
actually,
do you
yeah,
mean Beerus the purple cat?
yeah, Beerus's assistant, who's always snacking.
Whis. Yeah, the
Oh
angel with
yeah,
Teddy.
Whis. But Whis is like not even a bad guy, but he's he works for a bad guy. It's tough. You know what I mean? Like you kind of where do you start? Stop handing out responsibility. But his um his like penchant for snacks is enough to keep me going.
Got it. Interesting character too. And like you said, he's got to keep a real bad dude in check. However, he himself is a pretty bad dude. He just prefers not to always show that.
Exactly. So it's like which is worse, the
So
one stabbing you in the front or the one stabbing you in the back?
yeah, I mean, here's the thing with those two characters in particular, though, is that they really are like the ultimate trump card in all of Dragon Ball right now.
I'm saying
Um,
how powerful they are. It's ridiculous.
yeah, I mean, the thing is with Dragon Ball stories in the last whatever 5 years since they've come back to a regular series is that they have elevated their power scales to a point where it gets so GD ridiculous. They
Well,
have no
sure.
choice.
Majin Buu was also very scary at the time.
Yeah, and they had a similar sort of power scaling sort of redo within that series as well, probably not thinking that in 25 years they would have to bring the series back and essentially reset things to a point where it's interesting again. Every arc in Dragon Ball Super, it's like, it's gotten a little too fucked, we have to bring in the gods to hit the reset button on this. It's a little frustrating, but
They're right. You
hey,
think they're running into a Marvel Comics situation as far as the stakes?
I think they've written themselves into a corner a little bit for sure. And I think that it's sort of by design. I think the end, basically, this whole Dragon Ball Super thing is meant to take place between the end of the Majin Buu saga and the last 4 episodes of Dragon Ball Z, right? Everything that they've told in Dragon Ball Super, 131 episodes, 63 plus manga, or 63 manga chapters now. Um, it's all confined to that super, small space and time. So there's not much they can do to like really make it interesting because we ultimately know on the other side of it, everything's fine because we've all
Who
seen
lives, who
Dragon
dies,
Ball
right?
Z. We already know who lives in jazz. That's the thing. Um, that said, what would you say is your favorite arc within Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball in general? I won't say I
Well, I
won't give
got
any
yeah,
specific.
I have the Cell Saga as my background, so I think it's probably that part.
You and I agree on that. Okay, easy. Which of the Dragon Ball series would you say is your favorite?
I enjoyed this part of Gohan going from a little boy to a man.
I'm going to an 11-year-old to a 12-year-old.
It's amazing.
Feels like it takes a day, but before you know it, a year has passed.
Yeah,
What?
the hyperbolic time chamber as a concept, of course, I have a young kid, so this is a poignant idea for me.
So,
Totally.
would you take your boy into the hyperbolic time chamber to train for a year?
Depends on what we would train at. You know what I mean? Like I'm enjoying kicking the soccer ball around with him right now, and he really likes digging in the dirt and stuff like that, going to the sandbox.
See, no, none of that little kid shit. We're training to be able to save the world from a
Yeah, that's what I
genetically
mean.
modified
He's not ready.
android.
He's not ready for instant transmission. So
All right. Well, we'll give him a few more years. We'll check back in. We'll see how he's
right.
feeling at that point.
But
Well,
yeah, it's a great concept of that chamber, and yeah, practicing. Sure.
yeah, just spending some quality time together all at once. What is I imagine what your answer will be now, but what is your favorite fight from Dragon Ball?
Oh, which one do you think it is?
I'm gonna guess it's Gohan and Cell.
It's a fun fight. Yeah, you like to see the kid holding his arm and fighting the bad guy who's very mean. Also, Android 16. Any Android 16 fight was another good um, sort of vision into the whole part of the saga.
They actually just had a nice little Android 16 callback in this most recent manga chapter this month. A fight in a
Sure, I've had a mohawk once, so that's the character that I most closely identify with.
yeah, man, you've had some real interesting hairstyles over the years. I thought about not bringing it up, but I don't know the long ponytail braids. Those might have been my favorite. What was going on then? Anything in particular?
Just didn't cut my hair for a while. I haven't cut it for a while now, uh, since the this whole pandemic started. I needed a haircut before then, so I had been keeping it pretty short. Then I just let it grow out.
Gotcha. I actually don't have that luxury and was like buzzing it at best, and then screwed up shaving one day, and then I ended up with a shaved head like a half hour later.
You're starting to you bick now. You bick it.
Now I have to bick it. Yeah,
Okay.
I like went a little too far up with the sideburns, whatever, and I was like, "Well, you look completely stupid. You have to take it all off now."
I have I have encountered that when I'm cutting my own, making my own adjustments to my sideburns, sort of snooping back and forth between them before you know it, they're gone.
But at least you've got some long hair on the top to be able to cover that stuff up.
Yes, I got that going for me.
All right. So favorite fight, Gohan Cell. What is your favorite opening song for Dragon Ball?
Uh, I didn't differentiate too much given the dubs that I watched, the different programs. I've seen it in the afternoon UPN exactly type of format, and then also in a Saturday morning Toonami type of format.
So I'm gonna fill in your answer for you, and I'm gonna fill in Rock the Dragon. It goes like this: Dragon, Dragon, Rock the Dragon, Dragon Ball Z. So that's the one you're going with, man.
Oh yes, I remember that one now. The other one,
Wow, damn
not that one.
it. The one that didn't have those words.
Yeah, yeah. I recall the one that because you did relate it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the rhythm. It's all about that rhythm. So closing song probably feel the same way. You know, kind of comes and goes with whatever version of the series you were watching.
The dub had a lot of live orchestra, and I heard that the narrator passed away recently.
So, um, you might be thinking of the Spanish narrator who died within the last couple of years. I do know that when Dragon Ball Super came back, the Japanese narrator was replaced by somebody else in the cast, but the American narrator,
Uh-huh.
most of my memory of that, I think, is Kyle Hebert. I think that's how you say his name. He is the dude who does Gohan's adult voice. He's been the narrator for forever. Is that who are you thinking of, an American narrator, or are you thinking of a Japanese narrator?
Trying to remember where I read it now, and I think it was an American one.
Either way, it's not a big deal. Um,
No, death is important. It's a big it impacts us all differently, obviously.
yeah, I guess I shouldn't talk shit about people who we don't even know who we're talking about. They're dead, big deal. Who cares? I'm a
We
I'm a really
you know in the
sentimental person.
in the previous time we did meet Sean Schemmel at one or two of the conventions, so that was neat to get in the room with some voices we were familiar with.
What was your experience with Schemmel? Do you remember?
He seemed like a nice guy. We didn't I don't know if we ever did too much of a panel together. The conflict of scheduling is pretty notorious in those things. But I just remember, seeing him around the conventions and him being easy to talk to.
Yeah, he's a pretty approachable guy for sure. He'll bust your balls, especially if you've got a beer in your hand, as my experience was with Sean Schemmel. But I imagine if I wasn't me, it would have been a very pleasant experience. Um,
If it wasn't you,
yeah, if it wasn't me,
if you discriminating against bald guys,
it wasn't. I wasn't even bald at the time. I think it was just the beer. He's like, "What's up, drunkie?" I'm like, "I'm not even that drunk. I'm the only guy in your line. Be nice to me." He talked to me for like 15 minutes, but like, the slight punch downs, the slight ones. Um, Now that I've kind of taken the temperature in terms of the Dragon Ball fandom, whatever it is, I'm kind of wanting to dive in a little bit further to, first how you found Dragon Ball. I know that you talked about it a little bit earlier, but what was it about Dragon Ball that sort of resonated with you? I ask because you're a pretty smart dude. I hear you talk. You're definitely telling jokes way over most people's heads most of the time. Dragon Ball is
whoa,
notoriously like a
whoa.
dumb series, dude. So, what is it about Dragon Ball that resonated with you back when you first found
I think it lucked into being on after Springer.
it?
Um, it was just a way of bonding with an old college roommate, probably watching that show, and just sort of relating to people through fictional characters,
Got it.
which I might know a little bit about.
I feel like you would. Yeah. You are, the de facto narrator in my head, having been the narrator for Pete and Pete. Pete and Pete's one of those things like I think I liked Pete and Pete before I liked Dragon Ball, which is kind of tough for me to be able to say definitively because I found both of those things.
It's really a chicken or egg thing.
I just found them so early in my life. Being a kid of the early '90s and seeing probably the same broadcast to Dragon Ball you did before it made its way over to Toonami when I was like 6 or 7 years old. It was broadcast like really early in the morning, like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. So being too young to know how to set an alarm clock was the thing at that point. I was just trying to wake up early enough to check the TV and see if it was on. Pete was one of those shows too where I didn't have to wake up super early, but I didn't know exactly when it was on. I don't know if that was because of the poor scheduling at Nickelodeon back in the day, but when it was on, it was a thing that I just plopped myself in front of the TV, and that's the only thing I would be focused on for the next 22 minutes, whatever.
Okay.
Um, Now, do you watch any other anime at this point, or have you watched any other anime in the past? I mean, I'm not sure if you're somebody who keeps up on any kind of current series or anything.
In the vein of Saturday morning programming, I did watch some Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, which was I couldn't really get into Yu-Gi-Oh! That much. It was something that was also promoted on American TV a lot, and also something I was aware of that way.
Recently learned that the Yu-Gi-Oh that we got here in America is like the second version of Yu-Gi-Oh, and which is way more focused on the marketing and selling of cards to the kids and all that,
The toy commercial aspects, like Transformers.
or like Dragon Ball. But with Yu-Gi-Oh, I guess there was a series before that where the card playing. It's a series I never watched, so I can't speak knowledgeably to it. But it's the cards. the card playing aspect and the dueling is still there, but I guess it's just like really dark and a lot of people like murdering each other and lots of backstabby stuff. And I had to dumb it down for the kids so they could sell the cards, I guess, a couple of years later. I would be interested in checking out that first version of the series, though, for sure.
It seems the anime that you get these days is more explicit. I mean, it's not like we're not here talking about uh, a show where guys throw, tons of planet destroying power at each other in a means to prove supremacy, but it seems more explicit. The stuff that's released now is about being like the boss of assassin school.
Or the best in a superhero school. Have you ever watched My Hero Academia?
I've seen a little bit of no, I haven't watched any of My Hero Academia.
Dude, you're missing out. And
But
this is
people talk about it, and when I see people at the conventions and ask them what they're dressed as, typically they'll explain a bit. So they explained a little bit of My Hero Academia was very popular a couple of years ago, and Death Eaters as well. A couple of different.
So My Hero Academia, I know it's, I don't know. I've become a little bit of a fanboy of it, but I'm one of those people where I'll try to watch a new anime every once in a while, and I recognize like it's okay, for whatever reason it doesn't pull me in. And My Hero was one of those things where one of my best friends had to harass me, for about a year to watch it. I finally did. The characters pulled me right in. It's kind of like the Japanese take on American superheroes, and it's that idea is very much encapsulated by the character of All Might, who is basically the Japanese Superman. Uh, if you don't listen to if you haven't listened to Dragon Ball Super Dope for a long time, we did an episode on it last year. Goku, All Might, Japanese Superman, or just regular Superman, and the comparisons between the three characters and how they're all kind of the same, but how they're all also not the same. He's a really interesting character. It's just kind of a commentary on the American superhero aspect part of it, but it kind of does this cool thing where it takes different ideas from other IPs and kind of mashes them together into one. So you got the superhero stuff. You've got the
But enough different to be plausibly not a ripoff.
It's, I mean, you could probably say that it's a ripoff of this thing, but it's with superheroes instead of this other thing. But it reminds me a lot of the X-Men. It reminds me a lot of not quite Power Rangers stuff, but like the team, themes that Power Rangers in those shows try to, deliver to its audience. It's all about like the greater good as opposed to one individual hero or something. It's an interesting show, man. You should check it out. It's well done, and I think you'd like it.
Is that not what not what Goku is promoting?
No, especially not in the last 5 to 7 years, man. No.
Go ahead.
The last 5 to 7 years have been called the Goku and Vegeta show, and it's kind of obnoxious, man. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge fan of both of those characters, but Dragon Ball Super has basically been. It gets back to what I said before. The power scaling aspect of Dragon Ball Z got so ridiculous to the point where they brought in a character like Majin Buu and brought in magic, and that was their excuse to be like, all right, this is why they're fighting these planet destroying Saiyans now.
Let's uncork them, in other words.
Yeah. So with Dragon Ball Super coming back and power scaling have been such a concern, two of the only characters who make sense to have in the plot anymore are Goku and Vegeta. And Vegeta, I think he's only there because obviously he's a fun character, but it's like, what is it going to be? Just 100% Goku all of the time? I think Dragon Ball would benefit from bringing in more of the collective and more of the group. That's what it's been lacking for a long time.
Superman did bring in those other Kryptonians, General Zod and the like.
Plus, what's that other band he was in? The fucking Justice League? Come on. Everybody has their role on a team. I don't care if not everybody can destroy a planet at will. Everybody has a role. The most recent manga arc, because there's
Vegeta's come around about realizing that sometimes it's
Not about him.
Sometimes there's a benefit. Exactly. Sometimes there is a benefit to stepping aside. Is that the
Yeah.
case? I
They
think
they
he
do a
had.
nice job of that at the end of the Boo arc, where he essentially, he tries to guilt people into contributing to the spirit bomb for Goku to beat Boo. Then he puts Mr. Satan through, and then he has his whole little internal monologue about how it's okay, Kakaroto, you're the best now. I don't mind. You're number one. And then Dragon Ball Super happens, and they kind of have to walk a little bit of that development back and just have him be an angry dude
There
trying to
still needs
manage
to be an
Goku.
angry competition between them. He can't have permanently ceded that status.
Exactly. Also, at the end of Dragon Ball Z, now that I'm thinking about it, like the first thing that Goku, Vegeta, and Bulma all say to each other is like, "Hey, what's up, asshole? I haven't seen you in about 3 to 5 years. It's been forever." The
But
entirety
that's
of Dragon
retcon.
Ball Super, they've just been hanging out.
So they're retconning that, is what you're saying.
See, they are and they aren't. In my brain, yes, they very obviously are retconning that. However, they won't take the one step further and say, hey, we retcon this. It's now okay to move beyond this period in time, which I think is the only logical place for the show to go. Which kind of brings me to my next question. Have you been keeping up or have you kept up with all of Dragon Ball Super? Have you watched the whole series or?
No, I don't have a subscription to any services, and also have noted that several feature films have come out in the time that I watched, but I didn't keep up with those either about how they applied to the continuity. I just was happy to stay in my arcs and watch Trunks grow up a little bit and yada yada.
Yeah. Trunks is probably my favorite character, Future Trunks specifically.
Sure.
Although, it is cool to see little kid Trunks again be like,
Well, when he
oh,
picks up the Z Sword, you definitely down.
yeah. You're like, oh, shit. And movie 13, yeah, with the monsters and all that, Harudegarn, you see that one? So Dragon Ball Z movie 13 is the story of how the story, quote unquote, it's a non-canon story. So it doesn't really make sense in terms of the timeline.
Okay.
But they try to like tell the story of how Future Trunks essentially gets his sword. And it's little kid Trunks and like the time of the Boo arc, and Gohan's an adult and Goten's there. And the whole story is like this mystical warrior is released from a magic box. And within him is one half of this giant Godzilla sized demon. And his brother held the other half. They were put in two separate, like, magical music boxes on the other ends of the universe. His brother died. One half of the monster's out. Now that he's out, the other half of the monster's going to get out. A big Monsters versus Dragon Ball Z movie ensues. And it's
Does
really
the Kai
fun.
does the Kai not like detect this and rush to go help out?
Nah, not really. I don't come to
What
think
do
of
I
it.
what do I give you those powers for?
They don't, I don't think they know how to use them all the time. Or there's always like that sense of indifference when it comes to the gods in Dragon Ball. Like sometimes they're like, what the hell, we can't let that happen. And the other times they're like, yeah, we can't really get involved. And there seems to be no rhyme or reason as to which ones they'll fall on in terms of the category. It's frustrating. For that movie though, nope. Godzilla sized monster just smashing West City, and Super Saiyan 3 Goku, Dragon Fists, Historics. It's a scene. You should see it.
It sounds mean.
It's meaty.
Okay.
So, I know I had other questions. So you're not into Dragon Ball Super. I do have a couple other questions for you. Um, when the time is right. So you have a son. I listened to the podcast. I gauge he's around 2, 3 years old. Is that right?
Yeah, he'll be 4 later this year.
When the time is right, I don't know what a parent would make
It
that
depends. You
assumption.
know what I mean? Like I could go into the hyperbolic time chamber with him and watch every episode ever in one day.
Yeah, that would actually be a really efficient way to spend time in the
In the
hyperbolic time
hyperbolic
chamber.
time chamber.
Good thinking, Michael C. Maronna.
Possibly the best use of the hyperbolic time chamber.
When the time is right, do you plan to watch Dragon Ball with him, or show it to him and see if he likes it or not?
I'm I'll give it a shot. I don't know that it will apply so much to his life.
I mean, whose fucking life would it apply to? But
Just
for
that I approached it as a young adult
Okay.
first in the late 90s, and now watching it again, in the other iteration, like a Saturday morning iteration or something like that, sort of seeing what their message is, but also acknowledging that it's just a limited amount of the show and not keeping up with the entirety of it, like how it exists as a serial melodrama. You know what
So
I mean? Like a soap.
yeah, and that's exactly, what I didn't realize, what kept me so, invested in it when I was a kid was, oh shit, what is going to happen on the next episode of Dragon Ball Z? Is this planet finally going to explode or not? Um, I found
That
it
became
at,
stressful.
yeah, well, it also just became annoying too. Like, what do you mean? You said the same thing last week. I thought 5 minutes was up 5 months ago. Having found Dragon Ball through, having found Dragon Ball through, sort of irregular means, I guess, through like, those UPN. That was what the local affiliate was here in the Rhode Island, Massachusetts area. Um, UPN didn't show it regularly. There wasn't a set time. When it moved to Toonami, you were actually able to schedule your time and watch it. In between those two things, though, my dad and my uncle found Dragon Ball bootleg subs from Japan. So they started bringing those back. My uncle
It's very
Julius,
thoughtful of them.
yeah, they started bringing back these bootleg tapes from New York City. My uncle Julius was living there at the time, so he'd come back, visit us on the weekends, usually once every other month, and we would just binge watch these Dragon Ball tapes.
Sure,
And
because the individual episodes are not really enough to satisfy. It's kind of like intentionally giving you
no,
a snack.
you need to watch them in blocks, man, four to
There you
eight.
go.
So having found it like that, it was kind of, I don't know, again, kind of frustrating. You'd see this stuff on TV where it's like, man, I'm beyond this. I've already seen, what the androids and Cell are like, and I'm still stuck on Planet Namek. But I say all of that to be able to let you know you are like weirdly smack dab in the middle of the age difference between me and my dad. So that's kind of why I wanted to ask the question, because I feel like my dad probably tried to get me into this stuff
Sure. I
a
don't
little
know that
too
he would get
young,
like I don't know that he would get like Kami and Piccolo, fusing, and I think some of this stuff is a bit too violent for him right now.
So let's say we're at age like 8 or 9. Maybe you're considering it then, or is it more like closer to 12 or 13?
Well, sure, but kind of depends on what he's into, whether I would say, oh, now's the time to deploy the Dragon Ball Z.
Is Dragon Ball Z not one of those things that you're going to force on your children in life? Do people like that exist in real life? I don't know.
No, I'm saying like I have fandoms. It's not like my son doesn't know to root for my soccer team without knowing a thing about it. But we do kick the soccer ball around as well. So we have that connection to the real world as opposed to like, punching each other through mountains.
Yeah, that's probably a much safer hobby to have with your son, kicking the ball around.
Yeah, and you can introduce your family to your fandom through your physical collections of paraphernalia and stuff like that. If fans have statues and figurines of things and posters and stuff besides the original media, obviously it's another entry point. People often laugh at the sort of the oversized rayon Dragon Ball Z button-down shirts that were hot for a while, which should always, you know, come back or be like a big indicator in a movie of some kind of character that's going to do something.
Like what? Either be the hero or like
It's a
shoot up
side
a
it's a
school.
side mission it's a side mission in a video game for sure.
Oh man, those shirts were so obnoxious. But listeners of the
On
show,
the other hand, Super Saiyan Goku.
yeah, I mean, right there, prominently displayed on my chest and down through the rest of my torso. Yeah,
It's
no,
just like he stayed like that the whole day, the whole time you wore the shirt. He never calmed down.
Carlton, I know you don't know Carlton, Michael. He's one of my best friends that he's been on the show a bunch. Everyone knows him. He loved those big, ugly shirts back in the day. Just wanted to let everybody know.
We'll rip one up for Carlton later. We'll
Pull one out.
shred a shirt for Carlton.
Shred one up for him. So I asked the Dragon Ball question, when you may consider showing Dragon Ball to your son. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you any questions about Pete and Pete. I haven't been such a fan growing up. So this is my pivot question in the interview. Are
I
you
don't think
ready?
I've watched it too much with. I don't think I've watched Pete and Pete too much with my son. We've
I was
watched
going to
a
say,
couple of episodes.
you've watched it with him already. That's cool.
Watch a couple episodes, maybe the Halloween episode, which in itself is a little bit, but he doesn't really have the attention span to sit down yet for.
Does he register that it's young you on the TV screen?
Yeah, I did notice that.
What's the reaction?
So
like, does
no,
he freak
well,
out?
I've only. I don't think I showed him Halloween. To be honest, I think it was more 60-second ones. So those, those have enough action in them to keep him sort of going.
Got it. Some of the short stuff. I was trying, I'll just do it now. These are my questions. I do have a Pete and Pete DVD here with all, I think it says 42 episodes, which I know isn't the right number.
Okay. Maybe it's a crossover with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, gotcha. So I was trying to figure out what it was the other day that got me to 42 episodes, and thought that maybe, shout out to my friend Lance, Mr. Fusion. He's a big fan of yours and Pete as well. He and I were
Thanks,
sorting.
Fusey.
Yeah, Mr. Fusion is if you need like some really in-depth nerdy Dragon Ball content, if you ever want to get back into the hobby in depth and get some good analysis of it, he's the person you should go to and check out his YouTube channel. He and I the other day were talking about why I have 42 episodes, and I was trying to figure out why. I got out a spreadsheet and listed them all. I thought maybe I had some of the.
Are there some unauthorized cuts or something?
There are some shorts. I guess there was like the first 6 shorts that were kind of elongated into full episodes and kind of placed, I think, either in the middle of season 1 or toward the end of season 1. So those are kind of like sporadically in here. I thought I had the shorts. I didn't. I went on eBay last night and I found 3 of the shorts on a vintage VHS Snick Volume 2 that I bought for $20. I don't know.
So someone painstakingly combined these.
No, it's like an actual released Nickelodeon VHS tape. The shorts are in between full episodes of, I think it's like Roundhouse, Nick Arcade, Hey Dude, stuff like that. And the Pete and P shorts are in between each of the episodes. So I'll get that on September 9th, and I'm excited to take a look at those shorts.
Compare them to before and after.
Yeah. So what would you say is your favorite episode of Pete and Pete?
I know I had these questions in advance, and I
No, it's okay.
should have thought about it.
No, I mean, off the dome, though, that's what we're doing today. Maybe your answer is different. I also imagine these questions that I'm asking you for Pete and Pete, I imagine they're things that you've referenced on the Adventures of Danny and Mike, your podcast. So make sure that you go check them out on the Last Podcast Network. It's a fun listen. I have a blast even with the minisodes every week, even though they're only 30 minutes long and I feel a little gypped. Jeremy. Sorry.
Some Jeremy-related content. A good Dragon Ball Z related episode maybe is the very first one, what we did on our summer vacation.
Okay, that's the beach episode, right?
Yeah, being amazed at Dad's power to find an entire car buried underground.
Excellent choice. There are the ones that I watched most recently were Goodbye, My Little Vikings, Part 1 and 2. The character of Artie has always been
Very heavy.
that's a heavy episode, but like it's a heavy episode with the most ridiculous character that you'll ever see in the series. So there's like a special sort of
You talking about Paper Cut
yeah, paper cut being the most
or
ridiculous.
McFlemp or McFlemp?
No, I mean they're all. Let's be real. It's a very surreal television show, but Artie in general is the
Oh, you
most.
think Artie? You think Artie's the real?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, there's always going to be those ridiculous villains to be able to be the foil to Lil Pete or Artie, but Artie is like the staple of surrealism in that show. So to see him have such heavy moments and trying to, say goodbye to Pete and his character.
Yeah, it's tough to address a person who exists in that way, having to grow up and having to confront, his ward, sort of growing up as well, which we watched happen during the show.
In that last line, he's like, there's another kid out there. He's puny.
Uh-huh.
Who's,
Like you.
like you were when I found you. God, gets me
Yeah.
every time. Who would you say is your favorite recurring character within Pete and Pete? And by recurring, I guess I would probably say anybody with less screen time than Artie.
Damian Young's character's bus driver Stu.
Oh my God, we picked the same guy. I didn't know his name, but bus driver Stu's the guy. Images.
Damian Young's a very good, talented actor.
I have images burned into my brain of you in a bus driver's uniform ironing your. I think of it every time I have to iron something. You're ironing your clothes as you're standing up. What a weird episode.
It's good I didn't do the gag of ironing it while you're wearing it, because too many people injure themselves like that each year.
Oh, yeah. I bet you I've thought about it because of you.
That does not equate to liability, sir, and that's not actionable in court.
Plus, I didn't actually burn myself. So, this is a happy ending all around.
I would say there's no injury and therefore no standing to sue, Your Honor. I would move to dismiss.
Bus driver Stu also had that complicated relationship with a woman. Was she also a bus driver? Or am I confusing them with the
Sally Knorr? Yeah.
All right. So they did. Yeah. They had like a very tumultuous relationship. I feel like
they were both bus drivers.
I feel like is that the thing that I heard a little bit too much for a kid show back in the early 90s? Was a little what's the word I'm looking for? Adult for a 90s show, but like over the heads of most censors. I feel like Pete and Pete did a good job at some of those jokes sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much Pete and Pete really did have to deal with censorship. I think most of our stuff was sort of too smart for them to assign too much controversy to.
Yeah. What would you attribute the smartness of Pete and Pete to? Anything in particular? Was it the creator, Will McRobb? Was it like a collective attempt on things? I mean, was it the creative freedom that they gave you back then? It sounds like it was a pretty unstructured thing.
Co-creators, Will McRobb and Chris Viscardi, and original director, Catherine Diekman, really helped to shape the piece, but we also had some really great production people back then, each both independent and through Nickelodeon, who didn't try to step on it too much and kind of let it stay weird. Even though we are talking about a very inspirational character who wears pajamas forced to leave because he grew up.
So,
because Little Pete grew up, not because Artie grew up.
No, exactly. Imagine that show continuing to go on like twice as long as it did instead of 3 seasons, 6 seasons. Some of the adventures that Little Pete would have gotten into eventually.
Sure, that's tough to say exactly, but people could be in high school and middle school for a long time as far as having different dramas for Pete, Little Pete, and Ellen, and then Nona and Artie, and if he chose to come, maybe Artie came back for college, who knows? There's definitely possibilities, but also the episodes that we did make are each really specific pictures of a piece of time. So
that was one of the things I definitely always appreciated about the show was no matter who was carrying the A or the B plot, whether it be you or Danny Tamberelli, It was always an interesting plot, but yours were always much more grounded, like in actual reality, and the more relationship driven stuff. As where Danny Tamberelli was also always off to some huge, enormous spectacle. And I think it kind of worked well in
Yeah, his
that.
character was a
Kept it
kid with a
interesting.
with a tattoo, so it kind of there's only so many, you kind of have to up the stakes from there.
Yeah. I watched the one recently where he first meets Nona F. Mecklenburg when he's tunneling out because he's grounded for that one time he gets grounded. Um, I actually met Michelle Trachtenberg at a convention, not this past year, but the year previous.
The Buffy fandom is legendary.
Yeah, we're a fun bunch. I'm a big Buffy fan as well. So having Nona jump over to be Dawn Summers was pretty weird for me. I was also a big Harriet the Spy fan too. So when I met her at a convention, um, I was most excited, I guess, about Pete and Pete because I walked up to her and said, "Oh my
Sure.
God, I'm meeting Nona F. Mecklenburg."
Right.
And she gave me the dirtiest fucking look, man. She was not happy to have me associate her with Pete and Pete first and foremost off the bat, I think.
It kind of depends on what the context is when you're meeting someone, if they were promoting something else,
Or if I was, a little too drunk and waited in line for 45 minutes.
is
Um,
this what Sean Schemmel was seeing?
the difference is, though, I didn't wait in Schemmel's line for 45 minutes. He didn't have a line. I was the only guy there. Meeting her, though, was pretty fun. However, I did learn afterwards that it was her first ever comic book convention. So
Sure.
that could be a tough first experience for
So
anybody.
it was big for me. I'm guessing it would be big for anybody else, but it really depends on, again, where it is and when, and so many other things going on in your life at the time.
Have you guys been to the Rhode Island Comic Con?
I don't think we have.
I don't think you have either. I've been every year except one, and I feel like if
We
you
did.
guys were there, I would have freaked out.
I think we did Connecticon, which was in Hartford.
Hmm.
I think.
Well, you're gonna have to come to Rhode Island Comic
And
Con
we have and
when
we
the
have
break
worked
is over.
outside of Boston as well. So you're smack dab in the middle. We'll have
Yeah.
to find a we'll have to find a way. Those exclusivity deals do have some radii to them, though.
Oh, I didn't realize that's a thing that you have to take into consideration.
Sure. I
Hmm.
think it's like touring musicians, as far as if you play a place, and then
Got it.
a certain cancellation distance within that for a certain amount of time.
Hmm. Fun stuff of the business. With the Pete and Pete stuff, though, the last thing that, or the last two things, one of these questions accidentally somehow did not make it to you, or I skipped it. Actually, I skipped it. One of my favorite pieces of Pete and Pete is the music of the show, specifically from the band Polaris, who is actually the band Miracle Legion, sans one guitar player.
Hmm.
They weren't the only band that contributed music to the show, but they're like, the unofficial house band, I'd say. They several songs throughout the series. What would you say is your favorite song, whether it be from Polaris or otherwise, that was used in the series of Pete and Pete?
Apart from Polaris or by Polaris? I'm
It could
sorry.
be either or. I didn't want to limit you to just the Polaris category.
There's so much good music in there. I'm sorry. We had Juliana Hatfield appear in the first season of Pete and Pete, but didn't get any of her music in the show. We did use a lot of great music, and I would say probably from the lifeguard. Excuse me, what we did on our summer vacation originally had some Stigmata in it by it was there's some hard rock and music in the originals, and which was removed by the time we got to series production that went on that for sale on the DVDs or was shown on the network TV. But
Oh,
when it
wow.
was a special, yeah, there was different music in there originally that we used from the MTV catalog, basically.
Interesting. So there's like a first cut of that same what we did on our summer vacation, but with that song in place of the other song.
I'm wondering what the how the releases went, but yeah, probably also in the VHS releases they're that way.
See, now you've given me another reason to get back on eBay tonight and go find some of those old VHS tapes, see what I can dig up.
I'm sure
Damn it.
some people have put them online elsewhere for free.
That would be a better place to look, but I mean, I just like the thrill of an eBay auction. Michael, what the hell?
Sure, consumerism is
Oh,
good for us. It's good for Dragon Ball Z.
it's good for this floundering economy that I'm sure the president will be able to fix. All right, so that's your favorite song used in the show is the song that was not used? The Stigmata song, is that what you said?
Yeah. Um, a couple of the Mark Mulcahy songs I've heard performed a few times since then when we've gotten together for reunions, and those are also a lot of fun. Pretty much Mark's songwriting from that time is inseparable from Pete and Pete, and so you get that feeling when you hear it.
I did see a reunion, I think you guys did in 2012, I want to say, of the
We've done a few over the years in different places.
but he's like just there on the stage playing through as you guys do a script of Goodbye Little Viking Part 2. And
So
you were
there were
doing the
one.
narration and
There was one in San Francisco. There was one in downtown LA. There were one in New York, a couple in New York. So we've done them in a couple of different places and been lucky enough to have Mark there for some of them. And then also his band went on tour. The Polaris band went on tour, and Mark has released a couple of solo records in that time as well. In addition to people doing a benefit record for Mark after his wife passed away.
oh, I did not
Sort of,
realize that.
yeah, people doing cover versions of his songs. A lot of different big recording artists. So he's kept pretty busy, and occasionally we've overlapped with him. When we did a reunion in Chicago, for example, it was with Polaris also playing, and I think Danny's band has played along with them too.
Jounce.
Yeah,
What a weird name for a band, man. I don't
hey,
know what it
single
means.
single syllables. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's true. Good pick, Danny. I don't know what jounce means, but I know that I like to say it. Um, who would you say it was your favorite guest star to work with on the show? I know that you mentioned Juliana Hatfield. There seems to be like 1,000,000,001 musicians who have been on the show as these minor guest star roles once or twice. Iggy Pop had a recurring role as Nona's father. But even I don't know. I just thought it was very interesting that there were so many musicians specifically in guest
Yeah,
star.
we lucked out that way. One of the original director and one of the main inspirations for the show, Catherine Diekman, had been directing music videos and writing about music and stuff like that. So it was connected to a number of musicians at that point who made appearances in some of the earlier episodes.
So musicians or celebrities aside, because you also had a guy like Steve Buscemi on set every once in a while.
Uh-huh.
Who would you say was your favorite guest star to work with throughout your time on Pete and Pete?
That's tough. Um, there's a lot of good ones. Uh, Sort of a one shot, I would say that David Johansen was a lot of fun. Um, if as a recurring character, probably Iggy was the coolest.
Iggy Pop, yeah. I heard, I don't know, just like reading through some Wikipedia articles and some YouTube videos the last week or so since we first talked. I heard that he just liked to hang around on set and like try to shoot extra stuff because he just liked to be there. Is that true?
Uh, you couldn't blame him after he saw what was going on.
He just enjoyed the final product so much and wanted to be involved and just liked
Yeah,
to be a part of it.
it was a fun way to make a TV show. I mean, I'm spoiled, but I had fun.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty interesting approach to making television for back then. The more I've read about it in the last few weeks, seems pretty raw. And I think with the central focus being more about characters and the story that they're trying to tell, that's the thing that resonates with me for sure. 25, 30 years later. as opposed to like what the production value looks like. I see the production value now and I'm like, man, these guys were pretty ballsy to just kind of go out there and do it as raw as it was for back then. And I appreciate that they didn't focus on the wrong things. You know, they didn't focus on the production part of it. They focused on the story aspect.
That's a tough line to walk. I think our restrictions didn't really overpower the story that drove what you saw on screen, and we did whatever we could to have fun, I think.
Maybe that's a better way to put it. The production limitations didn't overpower or overcome, you know, your ability to tell a good story. That's maybe shines through the most. Um,
Yeah, as opposed to most of the other shows being made in studios. We were basically always on location doing a show, not in Florida, but in New York and New Jersey.
just shooting in random people's houses and parks and, you know, whatever.
Sure, and wearing out our welcome over time each season.
Were the people of Orange, New Jersey, all set with you guys by the end of 3 seasons?
There, we we moved around each season, had a different house.
Ah,
Some treats for you to watch back the different seasons and note the different houses.
so
They were gray a lot. I'll give you that as
so
a
it was
hint.
it was about just having to move every season. Then it was like, all right, we've kind of, you know, overdone the TV production in this rural neighborhood.
No, I just think they didn't ever make a multi-year deal with a neighborhood for something of for a project like this.
Got it. Yeah, that's probably something I wouldn't even think about. So that makes sense. Um, Michael C. Maronna, you've been so generous with your time tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time and getting back to me and doing super dope, man. This has been a blast. There is one final question that I do have to ask you. We are what, like 65-ish days from the election. I did not know until my friend Lance let me know. You had some firsthand experience with President Bill Clinton back in the late 90s. um, One thing I didn't know about you, and it's probably because you were advertising for a service that wouldn't have been on my radar when I was 9 or 10 years old, but you
Okay.
were you were Stewart in the Ameritrade commercials.
Right, which was also a 90s thing, but maybe not what you were watching. You're saying.
Yeah, it was a '90s thing that I guess wasn't aware of because they weren't advertising Ameritrade on Nickelodeon. Go figure. You, however, somehow, as the Stewart character from Ameritrade, made your way into this skit with Bill Clinton, basically the last few months of his presidency, that he showed in his last public appearance of how he's, you know, been spending his downtime since the election. And
Yeah, they made a promotional video for the White House Correspondents' Dinner, I think it was, in the year 2000.
what was it like? Because you guys, you the first time they see you in the skit, you're doing your Ameritrade thing of, you know, pressing your face against the copier and, you know, doing the Xerox copies of your face. But like by the end of it, you're getting ice cream sandwiches and riding bicycles with Bill Clinton. What was it like to hang out with him for the day or however long it took for you to shoot that?
That was much more of a different schedule than I was used to, and I just flew in and out of DC on the same day, and just shot a very few scenes in between. Most of the time spent in the White House was waiting for the president to come from wherever they were to where we were.
How does did they contact you with the idea like, hey, we want to get this character you play in the commercial to come do this thing with the president? Like, how does that
Yeah,
conversation start?
yeah. It was. They got a director by the name of Phil Rosenthal, who was a producer of Everybody Loves Raymond, which was a hot show at the time, and they just figured they'd jam a few things together, um, and so they made a parody of my commercial with Bill Clinton.
And I mean, by the end of it, it's kind of a beautiful thing, man. The If you haven't seen it on YouTube, Mr. or Miss Listener, go check it out because it's pretty funny. But basically, Bill Clinton doesn't have anything to do. He manages to find himself a free ice cream sandwich in a vending machine downstairs. Changes his whole entire day. Before you know it, he's hanging out with the intern and just having a blast. And by the end of the commercial, he's sharing his secret to happiness with the intern and giving him a free ice cream sandwich from the same vending machine. It's a work of art, man. It's beautiful. I had a good time with it. I'm kind of surprised I didn't know that it existed until a few days ago. But quick follow-up question. Did you get the impression that either Bill Clinton and or his wife were part of a child eating cabal at any point in that day you spent in Washington?
No, but I don't think that I met the missus either. Um, it turned out later on that my college roommate in that same semester worked on her campaign. Um, I
Did
went
she
to
have
school in New
anything to
York. I
say
went to school in New York. She was running for Senate in New York, and but the two sides never met. I don't think my roommate ever met him, and I don't think I ever met her.
I weirdly did go to the town where they're from one time when I was on my way to see Hamilton like 4 or 5 years ago. Chappaqua, New York. Is that right?
I don't think that's where they're from, but where they
Or
live,
where
yeah.
they live, I should say, not where they're from. Where they live. It was a weird, beautiful, quaint little town, but like the kind of town that you'd expect to see pop out of like the Gilmore Girls or something.
Westchester County is strange. It's next to New York.
Yeah. Well, with that said, we now know that maybe Bill Clinton probably isn't gonna eat children. Go vote. Less than 70 days. Let's not have this be the end of America because that is a very, very real possibility. If you want to go see Michael C. Maronna fight in trolls on Twitter, where can they find you, Michael?
It's at Michael C. Maronna.
That's the name I just said. You can
Very
also
good.
you can also check out the Adventures of Danny and Mike. That is the podcast that he does with Danny Tamberelli and their producer Jeremy,
That's
uh,
at Danny and Mike with the and spelled out.
with the "and" spelled out. So, you know, what else would it have been? Would it have been like a plus? Would it have been like an underscore? Obviously, the "and" has to be spelled out if you say the "and," right?
It's going to be patreon.com/ Danny and Mike with the and spelled out, I think.
That is the longest URL of all time. Danny and Mike with the "and" spelled out. It's a long one. But
I'm not sure if that one resolves.
thank you so much for taking the time. It was a blast to talk with you about Dragon Ball and some of this Pete and Pete stuff. I sort of said it when you got back to me. Like, I was very overwhelmed, listeners, when Mike got back because I was like, oh shit, I've definitely tweeted at him about doing Dragon Ball pods and Pete and Pete pods. Which one? Why not both? Oh my God, which one am I going to angle for? So we went with Dragon Ball today, but hopefully you'd be open to talking a little bit more about Pete and Pete stuff. Should I ever get around to making a project about that?
Thanks, Kyle.
Take that as a maybe. Thank you so much for your time, Michael. And that's going to be the end of it. Make sure you rate and subscribe to Dragon Ball Super Dope. If this is your first time checking it out because you wanted to, hear my conversation with Michael, thank you for taking the time. Rate and subscribe. Ratings on Apple Podcasts are worth their weight in gold and are much appreciated. So I'll end it like this. Michael C. Maronna on the show. I did it. Cool, man.
I appreciate it, Kyle. Thanks for having me, man.